Okay, I want you to imagine something. You're a royal physician in Madrid. The year is 1834. King Ferdinand VII is dead. But you've been called to his chambers for a task so bizarre, so completely unheard of, you start to wonder if you're losing your mind. Your job isn't just to preserve the king's body, it's to preserve the shocking anatomical secret that basically defined his entire disastrous reign.
And that's really the heart of this whole thing, isn't it? Ferdinand's life is this terrifying case study of how one powerful person's deepest, most private suffering can ripple out and become this destructive tidal wave that just shatters an entire empire.
You see, this secret, it was the stuff of hushed whispers and legends around the court. But it wasn't just some medical curiosity. Oh no. It was the hidden engine, the thing that was driving Ferdinand's paranoia, his unbelievable cruelty, and in the end, his catastrophic rule. So where did this all come from? Well, Ferdinand's condition wasn't just some random, unlucky twist of fate. Not at all. It was the predictable, absolutely horrifying result of a royal policy that had gone on for centuries. Inbreeding. Yeah, a practice that was supposed to keep power in the family, but instead, it created a ticking genetic time bomb. I mean, for generations, the Spanish Habsburgs and the Bourbons just kept marrying within the family. We're talking cousins marrying cousins, even uncles marrying their own nieces. This created a bloodline that was just toxic, a genetic nightmare filled with physical deformities and instability. And Ferdinand, he wasn't just a victim of this tradition, he was its living, breathing result. And if you want to know just how bad it was, well, this is a clinical description that was hidden away for centuries in the Vatican archives. It describes an organ so grotesquely oversized, so misshapen, that it made any kind of normal intimacy completely impossible. In his own mind, this is what marked him as a freak of nature. And you can imagine, right? A profound physical issue like that, it's going to inflict an even deeper psychological wound. The constant shame, the mockery Ferdinand had to deal with as a young prince, it didn't just hurt him, it twisted him. It forged all that humiliation into a weapon that he would one day turn on his own people. Publicly, his supporters were building him up as El Deseado, the desired one, this future king who was going to come in and reform all of Spain. But privately, in the palace corridors, he was the butt of jokes, a freak of nature, whose most private self was just a source of court gossip. And that huge gap between the public ideal and his private reality, it just fueled this deep, festering anger. And that anger, it didn't stay buried for long. It curdled into this really vindictive cruelty. There was this one incident, a young page. He accidentally saw the prince undressed. Ferdinand didn't just fire him. He had the boy flogged and his entire family exiled. The message couldn't have been clearer. His shame was a state secret, and the price for even glimpsing it was total ruin. So he becomes king, and what's job number one for any monarch? Produce an heir. But for Ferdinand, his condition turned this fundamental duty into a horrific ordeal. And not just for him, but for the string of young women who were forced to become his wives. And when you look at the timeline, you just see this devastating pattern. His first wife, Maria Antonia, died of what they called despair. His second, Maria Isabel, gave into nervous exhaustion, which, was probably a nice way of saying years of severe trauma. And his third, Maria Josepha Amalia, died after a traumatic childbirth. For these women, marrying the king, it was basically a death sentence. The horror really started on his very first wedding night. His young bride, Maria Antonia. She'd been dreaming of a fairy tale prince. But the reality she was confronted with was so terrifying, she reportedly just screamed, "Monster, monster." The act itself required specially designed cushions, medical implements. It turned what should have been a union into this cold, clinical, traumatic procedure. It got to the point where every single attempt to conceive became this nightmarish ritual. Special equipment was brought in, his wife was often drugged with laudanum just to make sure she'd comply. And then, when the pregnancies inevitably failed, Ferdinand, totally incapable of facing his own role in it, would just cruelly blame his traumatized wife for the whole thing. Now, you might think, okay, this is a horrible personal tragedy, but it's contained to the palace. But it didn't stay in the bedroom. Not even close. When Ferdinand was restored to the throne, his personal paranoia, It metastasized. It spread like a disease, infecting his entire government and becoming the official policy of the Spanish state.
I mean, you can literally draw a straight line from his internal fears to his political actions. His fear of being mocked, that led the Inquisition to start hunting down anyone guilty of sexual slander. His fear of betrayal, that drove him to conduct midnight raids on his own wife's chambers. And his fear of assassination was so intense, he had peepholes drilled into the palace walls so he could spy on everybody. His private insecurity became the nation's surveillance state.
And the consequences for Spain? Oh, it was catastrophic. Revolutionaries in the American colonies used his inability to produce an heir as propaganda, a sign that God was displeased with him. The treasury was drained to fund his quest for sexual aids and his paranoid spy networks. Major state decisions were put on hold while the king had to consult with yet another doctor about his condition. Spain, which was once a global superpower, was just crumbling.
And that brings us to the final and frankly almost comical chapter of Ferdinand's life. His desperation for an heir reached this bizarre new level, and his death would finally bring the truth, in all its shocking detail, out into the light.
Finally, at 45 years old, his advisors find him a fourth wife, Maria Cristina. But there was a catch. She arrived in Madrid already pregnant. And in his absolute desperation for an heir, any heir, Ferdinand willingly went along with the deception. He claimed the child, the future Queen Isabella II, as his own. It was really the ultimate admission of his lifelong failure.
But the full, mind-blowing truth, that was only revealed after he died in 1833. A secret post-mortem exam was ordered, and the finding was stunning. The preserved organ measured an incredible 14 inches in length, finally confirming the unbelievable physical reality that was behind a lifetime of whispers, tragedy, and political disaster.
Think about it. This anatomical truth was so bizarre, so politically explosive, it was immediately classified. The preserved organ, along with all the detailed medical drawings, was sealed away in the Vatican archives. It became one of history's strangest and most closely guarded state secrets. When you put it all together, the story of Ferdinand VII is just a chilling reminder of how a leader's most private demons can become public policy. One man's deeply personal physical shame literally became a national tragedy, and it directly contributed to the ruin of millions and the collapse of an empire. It really leaves you with a final lingering question. I mean, Ferdinand's case is obviously extreme, but it forces you to ask, how many of history's greatest disasters didn't start on a battlefield or in a parliament, but in the quiet, hidden shame of a single powerful person?